Today I'm actually revisiting some of the illustrations I did previously. I'm particularly working on a Christmas card. I created the rough for this Christmas card some years ago in Painter, Corel Painter, but I'm now getting a handle on Clip Studio Paint. Fascinating program. I've had it for a little while, but I can't say I'm fully okay with it, fully up to date with it. Certainly with the illustration and sort of animation clips I'm fine, but I'm not using it to the extent that I was using Painter, and I will get into it. So today it's a fairly simple, a fairly basic setup for Clip Studio Paint, and showing you some of the projects that I've worked on in the past. This is a very quick rough that I did yesterday for a client in Clip Studio Pro. Really just a very quick scamp or linear drawing of that. But let's go into Clip Studio Pro. It's a great program, sort of an update really of Manga Studio, and it obviously helps to have quite a large screen format. This is obviously a 27-inch iMac. This is a fairly basic overview of it, but it's setting up what I was working on the last couple of days. So if I said new, you've got these options of setting up an animation, a comic strip using templates, a book, they call it a fanzine, fanzine I'm not sure about, and this is comic settings. Or you can just set up an illustration, which is what I've done here. So my default here is for an A4 300 dpi landscape page. I've colored the paper. Let's change the color of the paper just for the exercise. Okay, it's probably still a little bit bright. Let's take it to quite a neutral color. Let's take it off there slightly, make it more of a orangey sepia color. It's a very basic color. I mean, you can color it however you want. Even though this is setting up an illustration file, you can actually add frames to it later on if you want to. You can add a number of cells and animate it. But for now I'm just going to set it as a new canvas. You can name it in here. I'll do test, and obviously set up more of custom presets if you want. You've got the settings here, postcard, custom sizes. It gives you the DPI, which is the dots per inch printing. Ideally you need 300 for a good quality print. And then you've got the option of raster or vector, and of course we go into that in other tutorials. Right, so let's just say, okay, we'll set up the page. So there's the page. I'm going to bring it in here a little bit because I don't want it encroaching over the tools. So there's our basic thing. We don't need a timeline down here, but if you wanted a timeline, you can add one. The timeline would just be for animation if you're animating across. I'm using a Wacom tablet, which you probably saw in the opening. So it's pretty much essential to have a Wacom tablet to be able to draw on here. And you work in layers, as you can see from here. So these are the layers. That's your paper. So if I switch off the paper color, that's now a transparent color. And if I've got this little bar, little no entry bar, whatever it is, means obviously that I can't work on that. It's not selected. If I select it, it gives me the option of working. And it's pressure sensitive. Well, if you've got a Wacom tablet, it's pressure sensitive, so you can set up your brushes over here. And you can set up the width and the brush size. It also has shortcuts. There's a bigger brush size, and it's very intuitive, very sensitive. If you've got a good Wacom tablet, you can get some good results. I'm going to resize that just by pressing the back bracket and up bracket. So that's now so I don't want any of that. I can undo. You've got multiple undos, or of course you can just clear the frame. Let's switch the paper on again, and then that's our drawing layer, and you can add new layers to it simply by holding down the right button and going add new layer. And when you add the layer, you've got the option of making a raster layer or a vector layer. But again, this is not really important I found at this stage, because you can always change it later. So I tend to work in raster purely because it's similar to working on paper. And you can name your layer anything you want here. You can change the color, you can change its blending mode. A lot of it similar to Photoshop. So it's got the same sort of effects as Photoshop. Some people prefer this. For illustrating, I would say it is better than Photoshop. Although, as I said, I use Painter a lot, and I find Painter very similar, same as this sort of the color wheel that you've got here. So let's just change the color of our brush. There it is. It's changed. We got different. You got rough pencil. You can set up. There's a lot of defaults. I won't go into those in this one, but there's a huge number of options and defaults and brush settings that you can apply. I'm going to open up the project I was working on. It's a Christmas card from way back. So that's linear. If I switch that off, it's all in the layers. This was the original rough, which I've set behind as a reference file, basically. So while I'm redrawing over it and correcting the drawing, this is my original rough that I did some years ago. As you can see, obviously a Christmas theme. So I set the opacity down, and then I start drawing on top of it. I'm going to set it right back actually at this point. So then you can see, so now I start creating the layers on top. In fact, let me switch it off so we can see. So this now that's the sort of basic layer that I'm working on, where I started off doing the lines and what have you, setting up the straight lines. This is really going to be more of a template because I'm going to kill the straight lines. I don't want those as we're going. And then I've started working other layers. I work in that second layer is the trees, and you can see again it's quite. You can move them around, you can change them, you can resize them. It's a bit quirky, this for me anyway. It's a bit unusual, the interface. You've got to it's quite a bit of getting used to it, but clearly very powerful. So these would now be the linears. Now if I wanted to color those in, I can color them behind or in front, which will be the next stage that I'll go into. Let's switch on the next layer that I've got here, which is the items in the shop window, and then finally the children and the animals in the scene. So let's switch off the other scene behind. So that's the children that I've got in. Let's zoom in slightly, and you can see I mean, I'm literally drawing that as we go. So I'll show you quickly what we're doing. So if I select the pencil tool up there, I'm going to change the color back to the default, back to black or grey, whatever. And then in here, I would, because of my brush size, I literally add textures and things to it. So this is going to be the line. I'm then later on going to work inside that. So I've reworked the line over this here. But you'll see it's not entirely changed, not entirely the same. I'm changing as I go. So, for example, I wanted him bending over slightly, and I wanted his arm resting on the windowsill, whereas before it was just in front of him. I'm adding some other features. I'm changing some of the features of the little characters here, shortening the legs there on the little teddy. In the sleigh, I'm adding a little bit more detail, changing the sleigh slightly so it's a little more robust. Changing the dog. So this is the linear. So that's going to be the linear reference or backdrop that I work with. And then from there, we'll take it to color. We'll start to color them in. Bring it to full frame or full size on your page. So yes, that's where we'll take it to now. That's this basic thing of Clip Studio as an illustration. As I said, it's got there's so many more things to Clip Studio. You've got, as I said, you've got 3D mannequins that you can set up and use as well. But that's for another time.